Today we're going to talk about Dynamics 365 service applications, which includes Dynamics 365 for customer service, for self-service and agent-assisted service, field service when there is a need for on-site help, and project service automation, an application for planning and delivering on-time profitable projects. We know that customer experience is becoming the #1 brand differentiator, and service, which is really the face of your brand, plays a key role in what that experience looks like. That means that organizations really need to understand what it is that customers are looking for as their expectations continue to rise. And then leverage technology in a way that lets them reimagine what service can look like. That becomes key in terms of an organization being able to make that step forward. The ability to break down traditional application silos to connect data across the business, which then empowers them to move beyond processes that limit business choice and innovation. And this is exactly the approach we at Microsoft have taken with Dynamics 365. What I'm excited to share with you today is how this creates a compelling experience across the service applications. We know that most service providers do recognize customer experience as a competitive differentiator. And customer experience is overall the most important performance indicator for executive staff and in the boardroom. Again, the role of service is being very important. And yet, very few service providers assess the quality of service they provide at a level that could be considered differentiating. What this tells us is that the recognition is there, the desire is there, but the ability to move those innovations forward is very challenging. And that's because providing great service is pretty complicated. Let's take a look at some of those challenges and how we're addressing them at Microsoft, starting with customer service.
Thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes talking about a very common set of challenges facing contact centers. I don't have to tell any of you that customer expectations continue their steady climb in a number of areas. That includes expectations around choice of channels and devices through which they expect to receive service, and the speed and ease of that experience. But as contact centers add those engagement channels, the collective architecture on the back end can become very disconnected, and it's difficult to share information or provide consistent experiences across channels. More often than not, it simply creates more complexity. And so even as new channels are made available, service organizations are unable to deliver on the promise of that experience. Research shows us that customers use, on average, 2.7 channels during the course of a single inquiry. And 90% of us expect consistency and continuity across that experience. Yet, only 8.4% of contact centers are truly omni-channel capable. On top of that, only 4% of customer service organizations can solve an inquiry using a single application. This becomes even more complicated for large enterprise organizations. Not only do different lines of business often use siloed applications, they often have to deal with legacy applications that have become part of the technology stack due to acquisitions. All of this combines to create a very fragmented experience, one that diminishes customer satisfaction and erodes the reputation of the brand. At Microsoft, when we think about how to address complicated challenges like these, we think about it from 3 perspectives. First, the customer. How do we create better experiences for them in a way that creates brand loyalty? And how do we empower agents and other frontline staff with the tools they need to be successful? And how do we enable service organizations and the wider business as they face near constant change and evolution in a rapidly changing market? What's key to addressing these challenges is the ability to break down information and engagement silos, to connect data and experiences. This is what empowers brands to innovate around process and experience. That's our North Star for creating effortless service experiences for the customer and agents, and in enabling organizations to remain agile as they continuously improve the service experience. Let's talk a bit about how these concepts are lit up within the application. Dynamics 365 enables end-to-end, effortless customer service engagements through any channel and using any device. For the majority of us, that omni-channel experience often begins with self-service. In fact, research tells us that globally, the expectations for brands to offer a self-service portal is at 90%. So having a place where customers can solve issues on their own is a big initial win in terms of meeting expectations and providing an effortless service option. Dynamics 365 for customer service enables organizations to provide a branded experience that's easy to navigate with seamless transitions between self and assisted support. Let's take a look at this in action.
Thanks, Leslie. That's right. Customers increasingly want to solve issues on their own, and that's where the Dynamics 365 portal, the community portal, addresses that requirement comprehensively. So I'm going to log into this community portal instance and give you a quick overview of the features.
Great, and logging in is going to give you a more personal experience, correct?
Absolutely. So as soon as I log into the portal, you'll see that there are these terms and conditions that I need to accept to use the portal. So this is a new feature that we launched recently as part of the overall privacy enhancements work we did as part of the GDPR effort. So I'm just going to go ahead and accept these terms and conditions and go ahead and jump right into the portal. So the community portal has community features like blogs, forums, and ideas, all geared to improving the peer-to-peer support experience for the community members, as well as self-service features like looking at the knowledge articles that are published by the company, as well as managing cases on their own. But typically, most customers who have an issue would probably just use the global search. So let's take the scenario of Charles Link having an issue with his smart TV, and let's see how the portal is able to help Charles. So as soon as he queries for the issue, it shows the matching results. And the good part is you can further filter down these results to just view the knowledge articles. So he can just go to any of the articles. Let's say in this case, he's seeing black lines on his TV screen. So he's going to open up that and view his KB articles. And if it makes sense, if it works out for him, he can just rate these KB articles. If it doesn't work out, he can just go back and continue reviewing the other KB articles. Or the good thing is he can also look at forums here. So right within the search experience, he's actually able to search not only the articles published by the company, but as well as any forum thread discussions which have come from the other community members outside the company. So he's able to do that right here. And he's also able to view any attachments or documents that are available and published by the company. So this is actually a new feature we've launched. We are launching in the spring release. So users are now able to view and search within attachments, so that increases the accuracy and relevancy of your search results. Before I hand it back to Leslie, I'd like to talk about one particular thing, which is the a new feature we launched for the developer personas. So developers now have the ability to view detailed error logs for their customizations, and this is expected to really help developer productivity, because it's been an ask from our customizers that they want to see the detailed error logs of any customizations or issues that they face. And we believe that this feature is really going to help resolving that issue. So back to you, Leslie.
Great. Thanks for that overview of the portal experience, Prashanth. In addition to the self-service options Prashanth just showed us, brands can also automate resolution with virtual agents or customer service bots. This is one of the hottest emerging channels, and Prashanth is going to demo a bot that leverages the Microsoft AI framework. With capabilities like natural language processing and machine learning, this bot is smart, conversational, and fast, with the ability to synthesize vast amounts of information on the fly, creating an experience that is not only available 24/7, but one that can add real value.
Sure, Leslie. So this scenario is very similar. So this time we have Charles Link logged into Facebook Messenger instead of the self-service portal, and he's having an issue with his smart TV again, and he's going to be talking to this bot or a virtual agent which is built on the Microsoft bot framework. So let's see how the conversation goes.
So interesting that he's on Facebook. So an example of extending your service environment to a channel where people are interacting every day.
So that's right. So with Dynamics 365, you can actually be across multiple channels. It could be Twitter, it could be Facebook, and or it could be the traditional channels like email or phone, and you'll get the same experience across these channels.
Great.
Okay, there you go. So the bot's name is Chorus, and it wants to know how can I help you. So I'm just going to say, have an issue with my smart TV.
And you're asking the question, it looks like in about, the same kind of language that you would use with an agent.
That's true. The technology has improved so much that I can actually speak to the bot in like day-to-day language, natural language that I would speak with any person. And it's able to comprehend that and respond back to me in something which I can understand. So it's just amazing. So there you go. The bot wants to know what is the issue. It's trying to probe deeper. So I'm just going to say, I have display issues. Let's see what the bot says this time. Okay.
So asking for further clarification even.
Yeah.
It knows that you need to provide more detail so it can help you in the best way.
I'm just going to say I see black lines on my smart TV, on my screen. What the bot has done is it's actually suggested KB articles based on the context of this conversation as well as all the other resources that it has access to. So the KB articles as well as my previous customer profile. So it's used all that information to suggest these KB articles. And you'll see that it's actually optimized for the form factor that I have here. So the first KB article seems to sort of relate to the issue that I'm having. So I'm just going to read more. So what you'll notice here is the bot has actually broken down the KB article into 3 sections so that I can review it easily on this form factor. So it's asking me to change the aspect ratio of the TV. So let me see what the next set of instructions are. So it says change it from 4:3 to 16:9, and there's a picture. There you go. So it also shows me a picture of how to make those changes. So for the purposes of this demo, I'm just going to assume that I've done this previously and it doesn't work for me. So I'm just going to say, no, I didn't find this article useful. And at this point, I just want to speak to an agent. I don't want to continue the conversation with the bot. So I just going to say I want to speak to an agent. So the bot seamlessly transitions me to an agent. You can see that no ego issues here. So it's just putting me to an agent. It's also created a case for me in the CRM system. That's just great. And this is just awesome, right? So the key thing I wanted to talk about here with the bot is that you're actually talking to it like a normal person, and it's able to respond in a similar tone. And it at any point of time, in this case, I actually asked to be transferred to an agent, but it's actually clever enough to detect the sentiment of the conversation. And if it feels that the sentiment is dipping at any point of time, the customer is getting frustrated, it can automatically transfer to a human agent at that point of time. It doesn't have to be the customer asking to be transferred to an agent. So
great. And Prashanth, when it makes it to the agent, what kind of context is the agent going to have for that conversation that the customer just had with the bot?
So the agent is going to see the entire chat transcript that the customer had with the bot. So they have complete context of the conversation, and they can just pick and start from where the bot left off.
That's great. So the agent can pick it up and start adding value immediately based on that prior conversation. Great, wonderful. Well, we've seen several channels in action And as Prashant mentioned, there are several ways that customers may wish to engage outside of that. Given that customers will move back and forth between channels, even during the course of a single inquiry, you can see why it's so important to not only offer the channels they prefer, but to make sure the technology exists on the back end to make that a seamless experience. As more issues are solved through self-service, we still rely on agents for really tough issues that we can't solve on our own. That means that for an agent, the questions coming into their queue are increasingly complex. And if agents don't have the tools they need to address those tough cases, they will be frustrated, they'll be overwhelmed because they are not empowered to be successful. This is a contributing factor for those really high turnover rates. In fact, the average turnover rate is 29%, with some industries as high as 50%. And for those new agents that come on board, it's even more overwhelming. It takes a long time to get up to speed and find the information they need to solve each case. And as customers, we're frustrated as well. And that's a big deal because around the globe, more than half of us have stopped doing business with a brand due to a poor customer service experience. Dynamics 365 for customer service provides an intuitive, role-driven interface that walks agents through the resolution process with defined business process flows that create efficient and consistent, high-quality service experiences. Let's take a look at this in the application.
Absolutely. So what I'm going to be showing is the Customer Service Hub. So it's a brand new application built on the unified interface framework. So it's been designed to empower agents and to boost their productivity, right? So let me show you the tier 1 agent dashboard. So what you see here is data from multiple streams. So basically entities like cases, emails, phone calls, stuff that agent would typically be working on, all on one single screen. So no need to navigate between multiple pages to actually get to the data that the agent needs to work on. So everything in one single page. These charts give you a snapshot of the workload for that agent across dimensions like priority, origin, status, and they also act as filters. So what you could do is you just click on, say, hi, and the streams below automatically get refreshed to show you only the high priority cases for this agent. So let's take the case of the agent wants to work on cases coming from the web channel. So just click on the web option there on the chart, and the streams are filtered to show only the high priority cases, 4 cases from the web channel. So let me add one more filter to view only the escalated cases for this particular agent. So I open the global filter on top and choose the escalated option. And as soon as I apply the filter, so there's a third filter which is applied on these streams. So there's just one single case which this agent is assigned to that is escalated. So basically a number of small things on the screen that allow the agent to quickly get to the work items that are important and they need to work on. So when I open up this case, the case form here has everything that the agent needs to actually resolve the case. So there is customer 360, which is all the information about the customer for this, who's raised this case, as well as the SLA information, the response SLAs as well as the resolution SLAs for the case, and basic case information like the case description and the case title. And the timeline gives the complete context of whatever has happened on the case till this point. So all the phone calls, all the emails, any chat transcripts, everything can be accessed right from within the timeline. And the third column is the related information for the case. So in this case, we are showing all the recent cases for Charles as well as his entitlement.
So this is a really great example of that connected experience on the back end for the agent, right? So
Exactly.
As Charles engages through multiple channels, as an agent, I have a full context and full view of what has happened.
Exactly, that's absolutely right. So the key thing about this control here, we call it the reference panel, is that it has these tabs. So you keep clicking on these tabs and the context of the case remains, it doesn't change. So the agent again doesn't have to go to a different screen to view different information needed for that case. So in this case, I just opened up the KB search, and the cool thing here is the results are automatically populated. And The results are based on these keywords that have been extracted using our machine learning model. So the machine learning model is actually run on the case title, description, and all the interactions that have happened on the timeline and pull the relevant keywords, and the results are based on those keywords.
So a simple process for the agent, but actually very relevant responses based on machine learning technology.
Exactly.
That's great.
So the agent can just open up the KB article right within the context of this case, and if it makes sense, they can link the article to the case as well as email and send the KB article to the customer back. So the last thing that I wanted to show before I hand over to Leslie is basically the business process control. So the business process control gives new agents as well as experienced agents, it brings in consistency to the flow as well as the data they enter into the system as they move from the identification to the resolution process.
So quick question for you,
Yeah.
Prashant. How flexible is that business process flow? We know how fast business moves, so how easy is it to adjust and add as strategies change?
So it's completely configurable. You can define the stages for the business process flow as well as the data elements, the steps within the business, within each stage is also completely configurable. So it's up to the needs of the company which is implementing that particular flow. It's completely customizable. So the last thing that again I wanted to talk about before I hand over to you is that this application is completely accessible. So there is keyboard support. So what that means is very important in contact centers. The agents can just use the keyboard to navigate through the application. You don't need to switch between the keyboard and the mouse and lose valuable time doing that.
Right,
So
and every second counts in a contact center, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it from me, Leslie.
Great,
Back to you.
thanks, Prashant. So as you saw, the Customer Service Hub provides a very dynamic and intuitive user experience. What you'll see now is the Unified Service Desk, or USD. The Unified Service Desk integrates and automates across applications, and that includes legacy and third-party applications and data sources. USD empowers agents with a single interface that contextually serves up tools, guidance, and data from any resource exactly when the agent needs it, providing dynamic guidance throughout the interaction. This improves productivity dramatically. Agents can onboard more quickly, they can solve cases faster and avoid escalations. And they have the context and visibility they need to provide highly personalized service. So back to you, Prashant.
What I have here is the USD client, and I've actually simulated a phone call from Jim. And what you'll notice here is USD is just based on the phone number of that person. It's pulled up the contact details of Jim. And Jim is basically calling me about an existing service request. So I'm going to use that particular call script. So as I go through the call script, you'll notice that the first thing it wants me to do is verify customer information. So I'm going to click on verify customer information. And you'll notice that this is basically information coming from a line of business application. So that's one of the key value propositions of USD. So typically in mid to large size contact centers, you know that agents would be working on 15 plus applications at the same time, and they're like switching between those applications to resolve the customer issue. And that's the key pain point that USD addresses, because it's able to embed or host those different web and non-web applications within one single client. So you no longer have to switch between these multiple applications to resolve the issue. The information is all available within one single client. So this is a good example where information from a line of business application is available right within USD. So I now know the potential value of Jim. I'm just going to see the open cases for Jim. So this particular information is actually coming from the Customer Service Hub, which I just showed you. So the open cases for Jim are shown here. And
so Customer Service Hub actually being integrated within this experience as part of the experience, back and forth with those line of business applications and other third-party applications.
Correct.
That's great.
So this is the case that Jim called about. So the case information, which we just showed you in Customer Service Hub, is loading up right here within USD. Again, you don't need to switch between these applications. I can also see the suggested knowledge articles for this case based on the case title. So in this case, I'm just going to search for a solution outside of the published KB article. So when I click on search for a solution, it does a Bing search and it shows me all the related articles for this particular issue. So the case title is automatically pre-populated in the search box and the results come up. And
I could be searching any data source for that information.
absolutely, it could be any data source. This is just an example of an external data source that I'm showing here. So for the purposes of this demo, I'm just going to choose an existing KB article and click on send email. So what you'll notice here is that the email form is automatically pre-populated with all the relevant information, so including the KB article link itself. So all that the agent needs to do is just review and make sure that everything is fine, and they just click on send and the email is out to the customer. So again, a great productivity booster for agents.
So Prashant, quick question about those scripts. How many scripts can I have as a service organization?
So it's, again, configurable, right? You can define based on the kind of work that your agents are doing, so you can configure those scripts so there are no hard constraints as such. So it's everything about USD is that it's easily customizable and configurable. So depending on your requirements, depending on your needs, you can go and play around with USD to make it fit your needs.
So I could have different scripts for tier 1 agent versus tier 2, or the type of product I'm supporting, or maybe the types of applications I need to access, and all of that can be configured so that I can step through that process seamlessly.
Correct.
That's
Yes.
great.
So the next feature that I wanted to show on USD was the best practice analyzer. So this is something which really is going to help the developer community for who are working on USD. So what best practice analyzer does is it basically, when I click on the report, it's basically generating a report. It's looking at the customizations that for that particular instance of USD, and it publishes a report and it sort of flags errors and warnings of potential issues that you will face. So let me give you an example, right? So in this case, I just ran a report and it says that the number of hosted controls is 61, but the recommended value is between 0 to 40. So the developer can then take necessary action to address this particular issue. So another example could be that you're probably using deprecated events. So there are also mitigation suggestions on how you can address that particular issue. So I think with this best practice analyzer coming out in spring, it's going to sort of help developers be more proactive and address issues much before they actually see it when the system goes live.
That's great. So they can solve some of these issues as they're implementing those custom scripts and processes in USD, so that they make sure when they launch, they're at their most productive self.
Exactly.
That's great.
I think that's what I wanted to show with USD. So back to you, Leslie.
Great. Well, as Matt mentioned early on, customer experience is quickly becoming the #1 brand differentiator. And this means that customer service organizations that have prioritized providing great service are in a constant cycle of gathering and evaluating data about the quality of service they provide and finding new ways to continuously improve. An important part of that process is getting feedback directly from customers. Giving customers the opportunity to provide feedback also helps build loyalty and a sense of ownership. All of us like it when a brand or organization listens to us and allows us to help shape that experience. Let's take a quick look at our voice of the customer capabilities, including some of the enhancements we've made with the latest release.
Sure. So the VOC is nothing but a feedback management tool. So it allows company administrators to create their own surveys and send it out to recipients and get their feedback. So I'm just going to show you a predefined survey here. So this survey was designed to be sent to customers once their case is resolved.
And how many other ways can we send that out? Is that automatically sent after a case? Are there other ways to send?
There are multiple ways, right? So in this case, you could just configure a workflow to send out an email with the link to the survey immediately after the case is closed. You could also write your own custom plugin so that you actually send out surveys to multiple folks and get their responses. So it's, again, everything about this application is it's configurable and customizable.
Very flexible.
And
great.
That's what it is. So here, this survey is, you see the welcome page. So it has like static data as well as dynamic data. So you can personalize the survey. So when I say dynamic data, it means you can pull in data from within CRM. So examples could be the customer name or the CSR's name or the case number itself. So something which is coming out in the spring release is you're also able to pass on responses from one question to the subsequent question. So a next level of personalization is possible based on how you actually respond to the survey itself.
So while someone is responding to a survey, it's customizing future questions that they're going to answer in that same survey.
That's correct. So in the survey response, you're able to see the exact questions as well as the answers for those right within the CRM application. And you're also able to see the aggregate scores. Again, this is customizable, right? So this is logic that a company can change on how they want to aggregate the scores. And if you had the Net Promoter Score as part of your survey, so it also shows whether this particular respondent was a promoter or a detractor, or if that person was neutral. So again, a lot of flexibility on creating surveys. And in this particular release, there are a lot of enhancements which have been made around performance, reliability, and troubleshooting in VOC. So something that everyone should have a look at.
Great. And I think we have a Power BI pack coming out with this release as well.
Exactly. So that's part of the functional enhancements in this release. So there's going to be a Power BI pack that will give you more in-depth analytics on the surveys and the survey responses.
Great.
That's it from me.
Thank you, Prashant, for walking us through some of the key capabilities of our customer service application, including some of the new functionality that's part of our upcoming release. Dynamics 365 for customer service enables organizations to rethink the way they provide service, quickly adapt as customer behavior changes, and then optimize around people and process. It allows them to move beyond traditional KPIs and think about the ways intelligence and automation can transform customer service. So far, we've focused primarily on the self-service and agent-assisted service experience. But an important part of the experience is the ability to seamlessly transition to on-site help for issues that can't be resolved in a contact center environment. With that in mind, Sajith will introduce Dynamics 365 for field service.
There has been a marked shift in the way customers view good service in recent years. Everything as a service is becoming a part of the conversation, and this directly affects field service. Today, 73% of the customers say that valuing their time is the most important thing a company can do to provide customer service. However, when you look at field service specifically, 65% of the incoming service requests require a field visit. And of those dispatches, 26% requires a secondary or follow-up visit. Now, this presents a huge opportunity to fix this problem with better field service capabilities. When you look at the cost of a field service visit, the ability to whittle away at the 26% secondary visit alone can create an ROI that can validate your entire investment. And this doesn't even take into account the enhanced technician productivity and overall customer satisfaction and loyalty. Again, all increasing the value of your investment. Simultaneously improving both customer satisfaction and resource productivity is a huge challenge. In the past, if you spent a lot of time with a customer to make them happy, your productivity decreased and vice versa. If you try to fit in a few more appointments each day, you may compromise on the quality work or customer interactions. Today, however, with Dynamics 365 for field service enabling digital transformation, field service organizations can do both, improve customer satisfaction and improve resource productivity. The key metrics for any field service organization are putting the customer first, having connected interactions across the service chain, and empowering organizations to be successful. Field service empowers companies to deliver predictive and proactive service to improve customer satisfaction, first-time fix rates, and resource productivity through advanced scheduling, resource optimization, and mobile enablement. Mismatch of technician skill set with the job reduces the first-time fix rates and incurs additional costs for the services organization. Dynamics 365 for field service is all about making sure we have the right technician with the right skills at the right time in the right location. Work orders describe and track the work that is to be done. Customers can create work orders through a variety of ways. On demand, based on inputs such as IoT, or based on a predefined pattern. Once work orders are created, the key to successful field service is building the right service schedule.
Scheduling in field service is based on three concepts: demand, which comes from work orders and is represented as resource requirements; capacity, based on the set of available resources with associated skills and working hours and location; and bookings, which represent the matching of resource requirements with resources in a given time slot. There are multiple ways to create bookings: manually, by dragging resource requirements onto the schedule board matched with resources in a given time slot; or using Schedule Assistant, which provides an extensible filtering capability to match requirements and resources. We can also use the Resource Scheduling Optimization Engine, or RSO, to automatically schedule by taking into account a given set of requirements, resources, and existing bookings. RSO will then create or update bookings, taking into account resource capability, constraints such as skills required, and objectives such as priority or minimizing travel time. In this case, the resources have been set to be optimized by RSO. RSO configuration enables setting the scope for resources, requirements, and bookings. Coming soon will be the capability for scope to be very configurable. Each of these can be expressed using a Dynamics 365 view. This enables meeting very specific business requirements for scope. Along with scope, there is also the capability to set the goals for the optimization. This is expressed by constraints, which set specific conditions that must be met by RSO, for example, ensuring that time windows are respected and required skills are met. Goals are also include objectives which governs how RSO evaluates alternatives, for example, taking into account priorities or minimizing travel time. Another new capability is to run RSO in simulation mode to help answer what-if questions when configuring RSO. RSO can be set to run on a defined schedule or on demand. After RSO is run, bookings for the optimized resources are now visible on the schedule board.
Not having the mobile capabilities that can provide real-time updates, service organizations run into redundancy, multiple work orders, and increased support costs. Dynamics 365 for field service has the robust mobile capabilities that allows a technician to see his or her schedule and work online or offline.
The technician can get a notification on his or her device. From the mobile application, the technician can see all of the work order bookings on the schedule for the day. Then the technician can open each booking to see the details. It is easy to change the status to traveling, for example. The map shows the location of the job and even provides the option to get directions to the site. Once on site, all details needed to complete the job are available. It is simple to select and mark tasks as complete, for example. When the work order is finished, the technician can even capture the customer's signature. The mobile application provides the information the technician needs to be efficient and productive. It works whether connected or disconnected.
One of the challenges of field service operations is a growing technician skill gap. Mixed reality technologies can help empower field technicians by leveraging 3D visualizations to be more effective.
Customer assets represent, for example, pieces of equipment, including service history. A new feature is the ability to associate 3D content with a customer asset. The content can be used for training or to guide a repair. The content can come from existing sources, such as CAD diagrams. Animation can be added to the diagram. The animation can show the steps for a service or a repair. Included with the feature is the ability to view and use the 3D content. This viewer works within a browser or on the mobile application. The view enables resizing and manipulating the object to get the ideal view. Using mixed reality content can help assure first-time fixed rate and more effective service.
Connected Field Service, or CFS, allows a field service organization to provide more predictive and proactive service. It can also enable remote actions, which can eliminate the need to dispatch a technician. Connected Field Service connects devices in the field and harnesses the power of Azure IoT so organizations can know about problems and solve them at minimal cost before their customer even becomes aware of these issues.
In this demo, the device is simulated by a web application. The key measure from the device is the temperature. When the temperature goes above a given threshold, an alert is sent to the field service solution. The current readings from the device can be viewed based on a Power BI object. Connected Field Service enables taking manual or automated actions based on the alert that is received. In this case, a reboot action is sent to the device. Another example is an alert that exceeds an additional threshold. In this case, the temperature exceeds the level of automated reboot, and it is determined that a work order needs to be created and a technician dispatched. New CFS features are being added to categorize devices and send commands to those devices. Another new feature enables syncing properties and readings with the Azure IoT device twin. With Dynamics 365 for field service, providers can monitor in real time the alerts coming from connected devices and take actions as appropriate to ensure uninterrupted operation.
We just covered the repairs and maintenance. Now, if it is a long-term job, such as a large-scale installation and maintenance of IoT devices in the field, we use project service automation.
Now more than ever, building trusted relationships and maintaining a solid reputation depends on delivery of outstanding and increasingly distinctive experiences, not just for customer service or field service, but consistently across every interaction. And this includes delivering projects. Before we hear from Elliot and Rupa and see the product in action, let's touch on what you should expect from Microsoft Dynamics 365 for project service automation. Project service automation brings together stakeholders, including sellers, delivery teams, partners, and customers, to deliver business outcomes that go far beyond the sale. It's an end-to-end solution that delivers a single system of engagement for customer-facing, revenue-focused, and project-based organizations. Built-in capabilities include planning, estimating, and pricing of multi-day projects, resource assignment and utilization management, tracking and approval for project tasks and finances, and monitoring of key performance metrics, exceptional customer experience, drive sustained growth profitability, and purpose-built solutions shape successful service delivery models. Building on the long track record in enabling business productivity, Microsoft is uniquely positioned to deliver solutions that address top-of-mind priorities for service delivery leaders. We recognize how important it is to understand each customer's needs, deepen engagement, and become a trusted advisor. Empower individuals and teams with tools that develop quality and consistency without limiting contextual specific judgment. And align operations across sales and delivery to streamline execution and drive balanced growth. Now let's walk through an end-to-end scenario that showcases capabilities for customer-facing project teams. Elliot will focus on core solution capabilities, and then Rupa will walk you through some exciting new features coming this spring.
Thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. I'm Elliot Ichimura, a Principal Program Manager working on the Project Service solution. Today, I'm going to take you on a brief tour of our Spring 2018 release. Project Service can be used by many different types of organizations, whether embedded services teams in capital-intensive industries or standalone service and advisory firms. For today's scenario, I'll wear the hat of Spencer Lowe, a client service manager at Contoso Consulting, a boutique IT services company. Spencer starts his day out on a management dashboard that gives him visibility into essential performance metrics that cover revenue, costs, and margins, as well as cost drivers like service hours and resource utilization levels. As an end-to-end client service manager, Spencer also has the option to switch to the resource management dashboard to drill deeper into utilization figures and respond to resource requests. Now, Spencer just received an IM indicating that there's been progress on an active lead. Here, we see the lead for a potential application design and delivery opportunity at Bellows College. As Spencer can see in the timeline, William has a call with his lead, Nell, and indicated that budget has been confirmed. That means it's time to start developing the opportunity. So let's just make sure that all required information has been captured before qualifying and converting the lead to an active opportunity. Everything looks good, so let's move on to the next stage. On the project opportunity, Spencer will need to go to the opportunity lines to summarize his top-level scoping conversation with William. He'll start by adding a product-based line for a $2,500 self-assessment app that Contoso's service methodology requires during the requirements collection and scoping phase of a project. Then, Spencer will add a scoping and planning phase project-based service opportunity under a time and materials fee model with an estimated customer budget of $32,500. Spencer will also add a fixed price application design and delivery line to the opportunity at $150,000. Now, it's unclear whether that will be enough to cover the customer need at this stage, but it's the budget that the customer has available to spend. Reviewing the opportunity lines, the total customer budget for the project is around $185,000. So Spencer can capture that as the target revenue for the deal. Now, let's assume that this opportunity is moving quickly and Spencer has received sufficient information to formulate a quote. He can go ahead and create a quote that inherits all the relevant information from the opportunity and sets him up to quickly drill into the quote lines. These also pull from the opportunity, so Spencer just needs to focus on adding details to each project-based line, starting with the scoping and planning phase. When detailing out a quote line for a project, Spencer has the option either to enter quote line details manually, or better yet, pull from a prepared project. Since Spencer plans to use standard project templates to estimate the work, he'll go ahead and create a draft project plan to give the quote more depth. Selecting the Smart Consulting template sets a preliminary number of estimated hours for the project and sets up for resource assumptions to be updated to develop the cost. Once the project has been created, Spencer can open it directly from the quote line. Since the project service application takes full advantage of the Dynamics 365 unified interface, all of the elements of the project lifecycle are available at Spencer's fingertips as clickable tabs. And project stages are optionally visible across the top of the page to guide progress through the lifecycle. Since the project schedule and resourcing drives cost and price, Spencer immediately drills in there. The scheduling grid reflects a modern look and feel that now gives Spencer the ability to assign resources to tasks and create project team members on the fly. Here, Spencer can assign a senior consultant resource to the initiation step in the project plan. Since the senior consultant isn't an actual person, but is just a representation of a generic resource, Spencer can profile this candidate team member in the right-hand panel. This extensible panel can be used to capture all relevant and required profiling information, including attributes like role, resourcing unit, and work location that may optionally drive pricing, as well as attributes like standard title or work hours that may drive costing. Once the senior consultant team member has been created, Spencer can go ahead and assign tasks to that team member anywhere in the project schedule. With resourcing assumptions detailed out, Spencer can now switch to the estimates view to review total effort hours, project costs and sales, or expected revenue figures in a time-phased manner. Navigating back to the quote lines, Spencer can do the same for the fixed price quote line, adding a project using the Agile template for design and development work. Whereas the scoping template did not specify expected team member profiles, for greater convenience, the Agile template includes resourcing assumptions that Spencer can either take as given or modify to fit customer and project-specific needs. Effort, cost, and sales estimates from this project will again roll up to the quote line. This bottoms-up approach to estimating a project can take a little more time, but use of best practice project templates and thoughtful specification of resourcing assumptions greatly improves accuracy in the quoting phase and sets the overall project up for on time, on budget, and profitable delivery. That said, on returning to the quote lines, Spencer notices that the time and materials price point significantly exceeds the customer budget. While it's fortunate that the design and development phase is coming in under the budget, this level of discrepancy will not go unnoticed or unquestioned. Drilling down to the quote line details, Spencer finds that the hourly on-site rate for a functional consultant is $275. Now that's pretty high, and as the sole cost driver for this phase of the project, Spencer needs to explore options for bringing down the fee level. Since Spencer doesn't have authority to override the price directly, he modifies the resourcing assumption to have the functional consultant work from the home office rather than travel out to the customer site. This change drops the hourly rate to $225 and cuts $8,000 out of the price quote. Now, it's clearly suboptimal to engage the customer remotely, but it's a better starting point for discussion given the customer's budget expectation. Returning to the all-up quote, Spencer can review the profitability analysis to confirm that the overall margin is looking pretty good at around 30%. As well, comparison to customer expectations shows that the project is targeted to come in within the customer budget and almost 2 weeks ahead of schedule. That's a pretty good starting point for a quote. So Spencer decides to activate and send it to the customer. Fast forwarding a bit, let's assume that Spencer's quote won the deal. Closing the quote as won automatically generates a project contract with contract lines that correspond to the quote lines and reflect the detailed costing and pricing work that Spencer did for each line. This sets the project up for replacement of generic team members with named resources and begin to accept time and expense entries from project team members. To briefly illustrate how time entries are submitted and approved, let's take a look at the project through the eyes of William, now a team member on the project, since he has the customer relationship and helped land the deal. William can see the project schedule and the tasks assigned to him, and optionally see other elements of the project as appropriate depending on permissions. Here, in the schedule, for example, he can see that he is the resource on point for substantially all the scoping phase of work. William can go to time entries to create a new entry that reflects the project and task that he was working on, and specify attributes of the work, like work location, and whether he was doing regular or overtime work. His standard title, which is a cost driver, isn't shown because it's just part of his profile and isn't something that he can change. William can submit time entries as he captures them, or store them up for bulk submission as appropriate. These billable project submissions flow to the project manager, Spencer Lowe in this case, while non-billable submissions flow by default to William's line manager. Returning to Spencer's view, he can go to Project Approvals view, review, and approve William's time entry. This approval converts the time submission to an actual and makes it possible to invoice, as this is a time and materials phase of the overall project. Returning to the contract, Spencer can now create an invoice that reflects agreed upon time and materials pricing for the hours worked to date, as well as a one-time charge for the self-assessment app that is a required part of a standard scoping and assessment project phase. Fast forwarding a bit, Spencer can complete and confirm the invoice, sending it to the customer, which will apply revenue against the contract. From a tracking perspective, Spencer can now return to the scoping project and navigate to the tracking view to evaluate effort to date and costs incurred, as well as other variances and useful metrics. That's really just a brief introduction to the project service solution. Resource management is a functional area that demands a session all its own, and there are also many variants to the linear scenario flow we discussed today. But we're here to talk about the Spring 2018 wave and some of the more exciting features in the release. For this, let me go ahead and hand off to Rupa.
Thank you, Elliot, for that excellent presentation on the end-to-end flows supported for projects in PSA. I'm Rupa, also a PM on Project Services Automation, and I'm super excited to present the enhancements to pricing engine in PSA in the spring release. As of the spring release of Project Service Automation, we're excited to bring the makings of Configure Price Quote engine for pricing human resources in project organizations that can be leveraged all the way from estimating and quoting to time entries and invoicing. To give a little bit of background, our research showed that pricing requirements in project companies usually vary across industry verticals. There is no unified pricing and costing strategy that can work for all industry verticals or companies in the project services space. Each company uses its own secret sauce for pricing employee time on billable work. Some companies may want to set up bill rates based on role and work experience, while some others may want to set up prices based on skills or expertise level. While these are some of the common scenarios for setting up bill rates, setup of cost rates could work in a wholly orthogonal manner. Standard costing of billable employees is usually done based on salary level, standard title, or the designation of the employee in the company, and some smaller companies may also prefer to have a standard cost rate for each employee, although that model can quickly become a maintenance nightmare as the company grows its billable workforce. Here's a simple scenario for pricing dimensions. My fictitious company, Contoso, prices its billable consultants based on their role on the project, org unit, and work location. Org unit, standard title, and work location determine a billable resources cost rates. In addition to these, Contoso also has to pay its employees a markup when they work overtime, and therefore they will also need an option to pass that on to its customers. Resource work hours with regular and overtime as options is needed by Contoso to complete this setup. Let's now go to Project Service to see how the solution allows for this kind of pricing strategy. The pricing dimensions list that you see shows the setup required for Contoso's pricing scenario. Customers familiar with PSA will notice that role and org unit are concepts that are native to Project Service Solution. However, work location is a concept that's relevant for my fictitious company. It has the values on-site, home, and nearshore. The same goes for standard title. This is not an out-of-the-box project service concept either, but it's still relevant for Contoso's business. Contoso leverages the XRM platform to define these concepts in project service as entities and option sets, and PSA's pricing engine is then able to understand and make use of these in the right context with powerful results. You can notice that Contoso is able to make org unit and work location influence both cost and bill rates. However, role only influences bill rate, and standard title only plays a part in the setup of cost rates. Notice the section that allows for setting up markups. It is common for project service firms to charge higher for overtime work and also correspondingly incur a higher cost for the same. My company, Contoso, has the same requirement, so resource work hours, which has the possible values of regular or overtime, is being set up here as a markup-based dimension. Let's now go to price list to see how Contoso is able to define bill rates, cost rates, and markups based on this dimension setup. Here's a cost price list for 2018 that shows cost rates by org unit, standard title, and work location. Notice that definition of cost rates is specific to a combination of these dimension values, and there are also default cost rates for Contoso India and Contoso US that are used for rate defaulting when an exact match is not found. The price list also specifies an overtime markup of 50% for US employees and 20% for Contoso India employees. And there's the sales price list for 2018 that shows bill rates by role, org unit, and work location. And similar to cost, there is also a role-specific default rate defined for the architect role. Markups are also defined for bill rates, and here I've used the same markups as I did for cost rates. Now, before we get to see resource-based pricing in action, let's take a look at a sample project Contoso is doing for customer active transport, which is the web development project. The project has a schedule, and let's look at the sales tab to navigate to the backing project contract. In project contracts in PSA allow for contract-specific pricing that allows for deviations from the standard price lists that you may have for the organization. Price list for this web development project has been created using the standard price list. But I will make changes to this price list that will then apply only to this contract. Here, I'm choosing to just override the markups for overtime. You may just as well choose to override role prices or any other aspect of this price list, and the changes you make will be scoped to just this SOW. One last thing to see before we log actual time entries is to check the setup of the resource that is logging the time. Spencer is set up as an employee of Contoso US, and he has a standard title of a systems engineer. Finally, time to see some PSA pricing action. Let's have Spencer do some work and log time on the website development project. Spencer logs 8 hours of regular work as an architect on this project. Let's go ahead and approve Spencer's hard work. Now that the time is approved, let's go to the project actuals to see how project service is able to calculate unbilled sales and cost values using pricing dimensions and setup done before. Cost has been recorded on the project using Spencer's standard title of systems engineer, org unit that Spencer belongs to, which is Contoso US, and his home work location. Unbilled sales, or the revenue component, was priced using Spencer's project role of architect, org unit Contoso US, and his home location. Since time was recorded as regular hours, there is no markup applied. Now let's take this scenario one step further and have Spencer put in 2 more hours on the same day. He will flag these 2 hours as overtime and submit. Let's approve Spencer's hard work and take a look at the actuals on the project. We have cost actuals priced for overtime using a 50% markup for US employees, and the unbilled sales actuals were priced using a bill rate markup of 150% as was set up on the contract specific price list. Let's now take a look at estimates to see how project service will use price setup in the estimation context, just as it did when pricing for actual time. I have 4 positions to staff on this project, and they are expressed in varying levels of detail. For the offshore SE, I have the full details filled out, whereas for the US architect and offshore programmer positions, I'm not yet sure what standard title I should use to staff them with. In the first estimate line for offshore SE, PSA pricing engine was able to get very specific cost and bill rates using the full dimension values match. In the fourth estimate line, however, cost is defaulted using the standard cost rate for Contoso India. Project service pricing engine is able to use the priority order of dimensions to drop work location and standard title attributes until a default cost rate setup for Contoso India is found. On the bill rate context, there was no such default setup by role or org unit in the price list, and therefore, understandably, the price was defaulted to 0. That summarizes pricing enhancement. In addition to pricing, in the Spring Wave, we are introducing the ability to make copies of project contracts and quotes in the project service solution. Project service quotes and contracts can be pretty intensive with line items, billing methods, detailed estimates, and invoice schedules. When you have contracts extending or when you have a quote template that you would like to reuse, you can leverage this feature to make quick copies of these entities. Let's check out how this works in the project service solution. I will use the project contract web development project for this demo. As you know, we have overridden the markup percentages and prices for this contract. Let's say I have a scenario where I need to create a similar contract for a different customer. I will use the copy ribbon action, and in the dialog will select the customer AdventureWorks and set the delivery date to say sometime in late December of 2019. I have the option to use the same pricing that I've used for the web development project for active transport, or use pricing that is applicable for 2019 by selecting to not copy pricing from the source contract. I now have a new project contract created from the old one with all of the lines but pricing that is applicable for 2019. That sums up some of what is new in the project service solution for spring 2018. Now back to you, Matt.
Thanks, Elliot and Rupa. You've provided great examples of how brands can build trusted relationships with customers by delivering outstanding project experiences. Dynamics 365 for Project Service Automation empowers you to deliver profitable projects on time and within budget while increasing employee productivity. Now organizations can go from asking questions like, how many projects are delivered on time, to more strategic questions like, do I have a unified view across customer projects? The ability to build a portfolio of projects and develop trust by delivering outstanding project experiences is key to long-lasting and profitable customer relationships. Thank you for taking the time to learn about Dynamics 365 for Project Service Automation and our other service applications.